Hello, Soberinos, and welcome to this week's Friday Fix, which, in the spirit of Christmas, is all about how to do Christmas sober. And in today's video, I am going to share with you 6 tips on how to manage your Christmas sober. Tip number 1 is to actually expect it to be a different experience, especially if you're new to living your life sober. If you're in your early days of living your life sober and you've only relatively recently stopped drinking and this is the first Christmas you're going to spend alcohol free, then you need to expect it to be different. And that's not different in the sense of missing out. That's not different in the sense of worse, different. That is just different. If for years and years and years you have been building up and developing a pattern, and that pattern includes getting really, really drunk and spending a lot of time drinking over Christmas, in the lead up to Christmas when you're going to parties, over Christmas when you're doing your family gatherings, if drink has been an important part of that pattern, then you can absolutely expect spending your Christmas sober to be a completely different experience. And again, I would encourage you to not think of that in terms of being worse different or better different, just different. And you can get curious. Get curious, folks, as to what the difference is going to look like. How's it going to be different? Because when you can get curious about that difference, that is a lighter, brighter, and more positive state than anxiety or dread or fear of missing out or panic or whatever it might be. So not better or worse, but different. And expect it to be different, because for years you've built up a pattern of drinking that has led you to associate Christmas with alcohol, and because you're breaking that pattern, it's going to feel different. Now, what else did I have on my notes? Yeah, I'm going to come on to this a little bit more. But some of the differences for me have been that instead of being about getting drunk, instead of being about, that inhibition that used to come for me when I was drinking, that inhibition, that confidence, the silliness, the fun and games, the party animal behavior. Instead of all of that, Christmas for me is now about connecting with people. It's about making healthy decisions for myself. It's about food. It's about seeing people that I haven't seen in a long time. It's about treating people. It's about gifting. It's much more about the daytimes and the mornings and the excitement and the looking forward to. In the old days, in my drinking days, Christmas was pretty much about recovering, and it was much more about the evenings. And in fact, my focus in my drinking days was kind of 100% on the drinking opportunity it afforded me. And it was not at all on the event itself. So it really wasn't about connecting with people. It wasn't about the games. It wasn't about the food. It was all about the drink. So it's kind of like when I was doing Christmases with alcohol, I was blinkered. It was all about the alcohol. It was all about that narrow beam of attention that was all on the alcohol in front of me. And I was blind to everything else that was going on outside of that beam. So it was like I had a kind of torch beam on my head, and all it was picking up was the drinking opportunities. And I was missing all of this stuff that was around me. Whereas now, instead of a beam, I've kind of got 360-degree light, and I'm experiencing everything around me. So it might not start like that. I think the first Christmas I did sober was I was concentrating very much on staying sober, and I was concentrating very much on just not drinking and kind of getting through each meal, each event, and experiencing it with new eyes. But as you gain in confidence in your sobriety, as you gain in confidence with everything you're gaining, as you gain in motivation for living your life sober, because you start to recognize more and more and more that this is a better way of living, as you gain in all that confidence and motivation and positivity and self-respect, you relax much more into these events, whether it's Christmas, whether it's weddings, whether it's parties, whether it's family get-togethers, whatever it is that you're experiencing sober, you become much more confident and laid back and relaxed about it. So you start to focus on all the other things you were missing when you were drinking. So expect it to be different. Don't necessarily expect it to be good different or bad different, just different. Get curious about the difference and how it's going to be different. And maybe retrain your brain to give a slightly different meaning to Christmas. So instead of being about the drink, it's about the people, it's about the connections, it's about the gifts, it's about the food, it's about a whole heap of other good stuff that doesn't involve drinking. Tip number 2, get happy saying no. It's really, really important, if this is your first or even second Christmas sober, that you don't heap too much pressure on yourself, that you don't put yourself into situations that are going to be too challenging for you. So if, for instance, you stopped drinking 2 weeks ago and you've got a work Christmas party coming up, and it starts at 8 o'clock in the evening, and you know it's going to go on till 2 o'clock in the morning, and everybody's going to be getting drunk, and you are just feeling this internal sense of dread and fear because you do not know how you're going to get through that event sober, just don't go. Get happy saying no to the events and the social occasions that are coming up that you think are going to be too challenging for you to handle. And you can get happy saying no by practicing saying no. Practice saying no out loud. Practice saying it in front of the mirror. Practice your excuses. If you're somebody who is not ready to tell people the truth about what's going on and the fact that you are no longer drinking, you might want to practice and rehearse your excuses out loud in front of a mirror. But you have full permission to put your needs first. This is a really healthy lifestyle choice that you are making for yourself to stop drinking and to learn to live your life sober. And in order to learn this new skill of living your life sober, you need to give it some time, you need to give it some attention, you need to allow some time for your body and your mind to heal and to rebalance and to settle and to get through any of the sort of more difficult, challenging phases that you might go through in the early days. You need to give all that some time, and while you're giving that time, you want to stay as strong and as confident as you can be, and you want to take every opportunity you can to look after yourself, to nourish yourself, to nurture yourself, to rest and to recover. And sometimes that might involve saying no. And guess what? It's okay to say no. If you say no to a party or to a family gathering, that's okay. There will be other parties, there will be other family gatherings. Maybe you don't want to say no because there might be pressures on you to attend, but maybe you can create an escape route so you don't have to stay too long. And I'm going to come on to that in my tip number 3, which is to plan ahead. So when you do have a social event coming up, even if it's not a social event, even if it's just Christmas Day on your own, and normally you would sink a couple of bottles of spirits or a couple of bottles of wine or some beers or whatever, or a combination of all three, whether you're alone, whether you're socializing, if what you would normally do is to drink, then you need to plan ahead what you're going to be doing instead. You want to plan ahead because you don't want to leave it until you're in the moment feeling tempted and feeling weak and feeling kind of a bit taken by surprise, to decide how you're going to deal with it. You want to plan ahead. You want to kind of train for the situation, not in the situation. So you want to plan ahead and decide, what are you going to do instead of drinking alcohol? What drinks are you going to be drinking instead? What activities are you going to be doing? What can you do to set yourself up for success? Whether you're on your own or whether you're socializing, Christmas Day on your own in front of the TV, what can you do to set yourself up for sober success? Going out to a Christmas party or a family meal, what can you do to set yourself up for success? Do you need to take a non-alcoholic drink with you so you're ready and prepared? Do you need to practice explaining to people why you're not drinking? Do you need to set things up in advance so that you're the named driver to make it easy for yourself to give an excuse? Are you going to be telling people the truth? Are you going to be telling people that you've given up alcohol and you won't be drinking? Or are you going to make up an excuse? You need to plan all of this ahead of time so that you're not taken by surprise when you're actually in the moment and more likely to cave in. The other thing you can do to plan in advance is to create the right mindset, to go into Christmassy situations with a state of curiosity rather than anxiety. So you can really get curious about how the experience is going to be different. What are you going to notice that's different? How long is it going to take you to relax and get comfortable and to start feeling confident and sociable? What are you going to notice about the event that's going to be different because you're living it sober? And when you get really curious and you adopt this really curious mindset and you treat it as if you're a bit of an explorer, you are having an adventure. You are exploring the world sober and you are discovering things as you go. And as you discover things, you're noticing things. You're noticing what's good about the experience sober. And so it becomes a much more positive experience, seeing it as a big adventure, seeing yourself as a bit of an explorer, and going in with a curious mindset as opposed to an anxious mindset. All of these things are really good habits to adopt when you're planning ahead. So, tip number 4 is to, if you are at a social event over Christmas, is to distract yourself from thinking about drinking. And I've made a few notes here because these are some of the techniques that I've used in the past, which have worked really, really well. One of the techniques to distract yourself from thinking about drinking is to actually pay attention to all of the other people in the room who are also not drinking. And you might be surprised as to the high numbers of people you will discover are also not drinking. So do a simple head count. Notice how many other people in the room are not drinking. Another technique I've used in the past, technique number 2, is to actually kind of make up little stories. Use your imagination. You spot a guy over by the bar who's with his mates and he's drinking lime and soda, or he's drinking non-alcoholic lager. And you can start to make up little stories in your head about why he's not drinking. Is it some kind of has he had an issue with alcohol? Has he had an unhealthy relationship with alcohol? Is it a sinister reason? Is it a simple reason, like he's just the named driver? You can make up all sorts of weird and wonderful fictional stories about why the other people in the room are not drinking. And you can make yourself feel a whole lot better about the fact you're not drinking by simply noticing that you're not the only one and you're one of several. You are not the only one who's not drinking. And just in the same way as you're not looking at all these other people who are not drinking and thinking, oh, that person's got a problem. Other people in the room are not looking at you and noticing that you're not drinking and thinking, that person's got a problem. They're just not doing it. You're not doing it to other people. They're not doing it to you. So that immediately helps you to relax and feel better about the fact you're not drinking, because you become aware that it's just a non-issue. It's not an issue for anybody else. It's not an issue for you. The third thing you can do, and this is part of that getting curious that I was talking about, is that you can get curious and notice at what point in the evening do you start to feel relaxed and comfortable and confident and sociable. So how long does it take you? I know when I was drinking, I would rely 100% on the drink to help me to feel relaxed, to help me to feel sociable. And it would probably take me 1 to 2 drinks before I would feel that warm glow of sociability and I would start to relax. So probably within about 20-30 minutes. When I first started going to social events sober, I noticed it took me anything between 40 minutes to 60 minutes, sometimes longer, depending on the context and who I was around. But when you start to get curious about how long it's going to take you before you start feeling relaxed, it gives you something to focus on and it distracts you from thinking about drinking. And bonus, it also helps you develop that curiosity mindset, which is so much healthier than anxiety. Another thing you can do is to, at different points in the evening, just to notice and just to think, okay, I got here at 8 o'clock, it's now 10 o'clock. If I'd been drinking at this point, I would be ... And you start to think about what you would be doing if you had been drinking at different points in the evening. So at 10 o'clock, for instance, let's say if I'd arrived at a party at 8 and I'd been drinking for 2 hours, at 10 o'clock, I would have lost all inhibitions. I'd still have some element of control and I'd still be, no, I tell you exactly what I'd be doing. I would be monitoring myself. I would be watching myself. I would be guarding against slurring. I'd be guarding myself against any abnormal or odd behavior. I would be making sure, I would really be policing myself, making sure that I wasn't behaving badly, making sure that I wasn't acting drunk, making sure that I was sounding normal and sober and intelligent. I'd be really policing my behaviors, my actions, and my words if I was kind of 2 hours into drinking. And so what I might do at a Christmas party or a social event sober is I might get to 10 o'clock and think, I wonder what I'd be doing now if I was drinking, how this experience would be different. And then again at midnight, I might be saying a similar thing to myself. I wonder what I would be doing now if I'd been drinking, or how the event might look different if I'd been drinking. So you can sort of distract yourself by noticing how the event is different because you're experiencing it sober, and particularly focusing on the gains, the positive, the wins, because there will be some, even if you're feeling awkward, even if you're not feeling sociable or confident, there will still be some gains in there for you. So focusing on those can really help you stay motivated. So just a few tips on how to distract yourself. Tip number 5 on staying sober over Christmas is to give yourself a bit of a reality check. Alcohol is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's in the interests of that industry to promote alcohol as far and wide as they possibly can. The industry wants to make it seem like alcohol is essential. It's essential for relaxing. It's essential for unwinding. It's essential for having a good time. It's essential for meeting with your friends. It's essential for meals with your families. Alcohol is portrayed in a lot of societies across the globe as being an essential part of any kind of good time. And it's portrayed and promoted in that way because there's a lot of money in it. And so it's important to kind of give yourself a reality check and remind yourself of that fact. The fact that you are seeing alcohol everywhere, in the streets, in the windows, The fact that you see people around you drinking is all part of this massive, massive cultural, societal, business drive to make us think that alcohol is essential. Um, we are sold this idea that we need to drink to have a good time, and we are sold this idea because it makes a massive profit. But we don't need to buy into that. We can give ourselves a reality check. We can remind ourselves this is a multi-million dollar industry, billion-dollar industry. There's a load of profit in it. We are being sold this concept that we need alcohol to have a good time. But the truth is that we don't. And the truth is that for many of us, we actually have a better time without alcohol because we find ourselves adopting this unhealthy relationship with alcohol for all sorts of different reasons, which I won't go into now. Whatever those reasons, if you're someone that has developed or has had an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, your life is so much better. You have a much better time without alcohol than you do with it. So you're kind of almost one step ahead of the game because you're giving yourself a reality check. You're understanding that all this alcohol promotion in the air around us is actually false. It's not true that alcohol gives us a better time. And for many of us, alcohol gives us a worse time. Was there anything else I wanted to say about that? If all we've ever known is getting drunk, that for us is what becomes familiar and safe. Even though it's unsafe, our unconscious minds will be telling us that's the pattern we want to revert to because that's what we know. And of course, we're going to be drawn to that. So if we find ourselves being drawn to drinking over the Christmas festivities, that's natural that we're going to find ourselves being drawn towards it. But we can ignore that. We can ignore that because we have that knowledge that tells us our lives are better without it. And that's the voice we want to be paying attention to. And like I said before, if all Christmas has meant to you before is drinking, getting drunk, recovering from drinking, commiserating with one another about our hangovers, drinking to feel better, getting drunk again, going around in that vicious cycle, that's all we've known. That's what we're going to naturally, because it's become an unconscious behavior pattern, we're going to naturally be drawn to repeating that. But we can break that pattern and we can create a different meaning for Christmas. Christmas doesn't have to mean what it always meant to us before. It can mean something new. And it can mean some of those things I listed before. It can mean connecting with friends, connecting with family. It can mean togetherness. It can mean being true to our authentic selves, being more authentic around people. It can mean building our self-confidence by practicing living our lives sober under a little bit more stress and pressure than we would normally get. It can mean giving. It can mean feeling good. It can mean time for ourselves. It can mean time for our grandchildren, time for our children, time for our grandparents, time for our pets. It can mean giving ourselves time, giving other people time. It can mean a whole different range of things. It doesn't have to mean getting drunk. And you can change that meaning for yourself to whatever works for you. It can be about celebrating the good. But the ultimate point is we don't have to buy into this false idea that we're being sold that we need alcohol to have a good time at Christmas. We don't. And I can tell you from my own experience, every single Christmas I've had, which is about 6 or 7 now, since I stopped drinking, has been way better. Apart from the first one. The first one was panic stations. I had panic attacks like you wouldn't believe my first Christmas sober, but I got through it. Every Christmas since then has been amazing. It's been so much better than it ever was when I was drinking. So stick with it, even if it's a struggle getting through the first one, stick with it and it does get better and you can create these wonderful new meanings for Christmas. And finally, tip number 6 is focus on the positives. The more you focus on what you're gaining from living your life alcohol free, the more motivated you're going to feel. And the more motivated you're going to feel, the easier it is to stay on track. So focus on the positives, count your wins, count your successes, count the achievements, even if it's a small achievement like, I don't know, you've been to the supermarket and you've come away with a shopping bag and you managed to avoid the wine aisle or the beer aisle and you've come away with alcohol-free shopping. That's a win. Even if you're doing that week in, week out, that is still a win. It could be a big win, like you went to the office Christmas party and you managed to stay sober. That's a win. Acknowledge it, notice it, celebrate it. The more you acknowledge, the more you notice, and the more you celebrate your wins, the more you celebrate everything you're gaining from living your life sober, the more motivated you will stay. And the more motivated you stay, the easier it is to stay on track in the face of challenges. You can, I did write a couple of tips down here actually. You can, each morning you wake up, you can write down one thing in the day that you are looking forward to. And you can start that right now. You can start that tomorrow morning. Write down one thing that you're looking forward to. And then each evening, just before you go to bed, or even when you're in bed, you can write down one thing that you enjoyed about the day, and that might be the thing you were looking forward to, or it might not, because life doesn't always turn out the way we want it to. But you can write down one thing that you enjoyed that day, and you can write down one thing that was a good achievement for you that day. Oops. Forgot that I hadn't put my phone on silent. So one thing that you enjoyed about the day and one good achievement, one thing that you achieved in the day. And that's just a little tip to help keep yourself motivated and help you focus on the positives. So I will post, actually, I think I'll post a link to a blog that I've written about how to stay sober over Christmas. I'll post that below. But in the meantime, I'd love to hear your answer to this question. What are you looking forward to this Christmas? Is this your first Christmas sober, your second, your third? Let me know what you are looking forward to about going through this Christmas or living this Christmas sober. I would love to hear from you. I will look forward to catching up with you in tomorrow's Saturday Share in the Facebook group. If you're not already there, come on to Facebook, come to Go Get Sober, and we will welcome you with open arms, especially at Christmas. So yeah, I'll catch up with you in tomorrow's Saturday Share, but in the meantime, let's go get sober together. Bye for now.